Yeah, man. So I was at told you I was at a family wedding this past weekend over Labor Day. So,
Yeah.
I briefly talked about this, but the show was, the talk of the wedding. We were talking about quite a bit. I'll tell you, it's funny. It's a weird thing, right? And we'll be brief because, we got a ton of stuff to get through tonight. We're going to be a little shorter than usual for reasons we'll explain in a minute. But, my cousin found our show on his own, just scrolling through YouTube. This was months ago. And runs into our show of all things. It was like, what the heck? Wait a minute. He didn't know about the show. And,
Right.
and so, he had reached out to me about it. So I hadn't seen him though. And then I saw him at the wedding this past weekend. And and so he couldn't believe it. In fact, when he saw it, he was like, wait a minute, is that him? And he's like sending it to my sister, sending it to my other cousins. Like, hey, am I nuts? And I'm like, yeah, that's obviously him. But, it was pretty fun. It's crazy how like you just, of all the things, because there's no reason. It's not like he was searching for me, so the algorithm is not going to connect us to say, oh wait,
Right.
here's something. You'd never run into us before. We've been doing the show for quite a while, and then he's just scrolling through right before bed, last couple swipes on YouTube Shorts, and then boom, he sees a clip of us talking. And so it was pretty crazy. So
That's
it was cool
hilarious.
though. The family was excited about the show. They're really enjoying it. My cousins are fans of the show, so they really enjoy the show. So shout out to them. Shout out to my cousin
Nice.
Michael, who was the one that found this.
What's up, Michael? Appreciate you listening.
Oh,
I
he's
hope
listening.
I hope he had nice things to say about me.
He didn't mention you much. I mean, it was seeming really centric about me, but I reminded him that you were on the show, and he seemed confused. He didn't know what I was talking about.
What?
Yeah, like it was funny. Yeah. So I don't know. He said, oh, if there was someone else that just didn't make an impression on me, I guess. But he felt really no,
that feels right.
he was no, he was very complimentary, and I actually was quoting stories back to me from months ago that we had done
That
on the
is
show.
so
He's not a big
funny.
sports guy, but he was throwing stuff out there because he just said like, man, you guys find really interesting stuff to talk about, and the way you talk about it is really interesting. And he said like, I'm not even into sports, but man, that story that you said a couple months ago about Michael Jordan selling the Hornets and how that happened, and he used no money to buy them basically, and then was able to sell it, make a $3 billion profit. He thought it was really cool. So it was cool to catch up with the family, but also pretty neat that the show is minimally, the show's become very popular among my family. So if it grows nowhere else, at least we're accomplishing that.
And I'm assuming all this was over the best man speech he was talking about the show.
That's right.
The bride and groom was like, what is happening?
Yeah,
right
like
now?
why would you be talking about this? But he really likes the show. So
that makes sense. It makes sense.
But yeah, so anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and count us in. We're gonna jump into this thing. We're gonna rapid fire tonight. So so let's jump in and get this sucker started.
T minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. You Get the Horn Show. Tad and Jeff here. We're going to jump right into this, brother. Good to see you.
Yes, yeah, you too. Feels like it's been a minute.
Yeah, it has. And we are going to roll through this. We're doing some changes here. We're going to explain this really briefly for people. So, for people who listen to the show, typically, that we kind of have the front part of the show. We typically talk about sports. Second half of the show, it's politics, current events, interesting headlines, funny stories, whatever we've seen that kind of catches our interest. And as time has gone on, we never get through all of the topics that we have for an episode. And we're always trying to be time conscious, and we end up with these episodes that, we try to cut it short, and it's 2 hours. So, now we've decided we're going to split it up. We're going to have 2 episodes a week. One is going to be a sports show. One is going to be basically everything else. Our take on politics, current events, headline news, all of these types of things. And so you're going to still have You Get the Horns sports, right? That's going to be on our platforms. That's going to be a podcast. It's going to be on our YouTube page. And then you're going to have the show that you're listening to now, which will have no sports and will be all politics, current events, you know, and our take on the interesting things in the news that we've been seeing recently. So it'll be a little bit of a change, but we feel like it tailors a little bit more to our audience because, like we said before, if somebody's coming on to listen to politics and our take on current events, they probably don't want to sit through 45 minutes of sports talk to be able to get to that. Likewise, if you're interested in sports, we're talking about sports, and then all of a sudden we totally switch and we roll into, you know, money being given to Ukraine and things like this. Magically, you know, that's kind of a, you know, gives you a little whiplash there. So we've decided to kind of split it up into 2 episodes a week so that way, you know, it can tailor a little bit more to what people would want to see and hear. So hopefully it works for everybody, makes it a little bit easier to follow along with us. So with all that having been said, we are going to have a much shorter episode tonight. Our first one in, we did not want to overload it with a ton of topics because it is our first one that we're trying to do this way. So we're going to try to stretch our legs a little bit, but I do have some interesting things. And if it works with you, brother, we're going to go ahead and jump right into this.
Let's do it.
Right. So I've got something I want to show you here really quickly if I can, because we just had, I believe it was yesterday, a very big day, historically speaking, an important day. And I will go ahead and share my screen here. These 3 guys are pretty interesting characters, and I will let you hear what this clip has to say.
25-year-old Stanford PhD students Sergey Brin and Larry Page, who have started an internet search company called Google. The company's right here in Larry and Sergey's room in the William Gates building at Stanford. The Google boys, as part of their PhDs, created a search engine, software that finds useful information on your behalf on the internet. It does what Yahoo or Excite do, but Larry and Sergey believed it did it much better and believed they could form a company based on it.
Okay, so I'll stop the clip there because the important thing that just happened is that Google was founded, I believe it was yesterday, on that day in 1998. 1998. So we just passed a significant anniversary for Google, and man, how the world has changed. So interesting that even you listen to that report and the guy says it does what Yahoo or Excite do. It just does it better. Excite. I mean, a search engine, like who remembers using Excite? You know, I mean, Yahoo is still around in some form, but far smaller than it ever used to be. And now Google has, you know, they're the 800-pound gorilla of, you know, internet search engines. Meanwhile, they're doing that interview from a Stanford dorm room talking about a new business that they started. So pretty crazy.
It's hilarious too, because if you go further in that clip, they were talking about an investor who had given them $100,000, so they wouldn't have to go out there and, you know, try and raise the capital and do all that stuff. And Google's now worth $1.71 trillion is what they're worth. I mean, what
insane.
A thought.
Yeah.
And this is a search engine. This is just for you to find a way to find information quicker.
That's
and
it.
What they've spun that off into is just, I mean, I don't even think they could have seen that coming.
No,
and maybe they did.
No,
maybe they had the
no
foresight
way.
for that, but I mean, they're probably just happy at that point into getting, you know, a $12 million evaluation. You know,
Right.
they're just happy to get that, and now they're worth over $1 trillion. I mean,
it's crazy.
My gosh,
unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, where it went from 1998 to now. I mean, that is such a short period of time. I mean, I was out of high school in 1998.
Yeah.
I was out of high school, and so from the time that I got out of high school to today, Google went from 2 guys in a dorm room to now being worth most of the world. Like it's just incredible. Absolutely unbelievable.
It. You know, in 1998, I think I was still asking Jeeves, you know, what's where to find something.
Yeah, then Jeeves would ask Yahoo or Excite and come back and tell you.
Well, oh my gosh! Like now you go through and you try to think of all the web browsers that you used. You know, just the search browsers, and you know, it was Ask Jeeves, it was Yahoo. Yahoo was like the forefront in that.
Yeah. Yep.
then Excite, and then there was one dog pile, which I think literally was like all of them combined somehow. I don't remember. I
Okay.
remember dog pile. But yeah, and then of course, Ask Jeeves was popular. They had like the commercials and things like that were
Yeah, the
out.
butler.
Yeah, which of course, silly because it's like you gotta ask Jeeves like but then Google, what is that, like what does
Right.
that even mean, what so crazy. I mean, they're just like
Yeah.
you don't even think about like the web search browser wars, right? I mean, that's really what they were. It was everyone
Yeah.
fighting to get you to go to their site to try and use them, to search for what you needed to find.
That's it.
Crazy.
Yeah. Unbelievable how things have changed, and they've changed very quickly. So yeah, Google celebrating an anniversary, having just been founded on that day. So that made me think like how things have changed in general, and we're gonna take a little bit of a bigger view on this. But one of the things that struck me, because you talk about how now Google's worth over $1 trillion. So that makes me think, money. We talk about inflation on the show a lot, and the value of money and how the economy is changing, and all of these things. One thing that I thought was pretty amazing, and I'm going to go ahead and I will bring up this picture again. If you're listening on the podcast, not vitally important that you're able to see this, but it'll at least for those watching can help a little bit. This chart that's on the screen right now is U.S. real wages since 1965, and it goes from 1965 to now. And if you look, it's going up and down, but in general, people are not making more money now when you count it against inflation and the cost of goods and everything. People are not making more money now than they were in 1965. And in fact, if you really go off of 1965 itself, we're making a little bit less. And we've had ups and downs, significant ups and downs. I mean, you look at some significant recessions. 1980 was way down. 1975 looks like it was pretty far down. But you have a spike in the early 70s, and then you have the gas crisis and everything tanks. Then it bounces back, then eventually drops way back down, and then it just stays through this even, up and down, up and down, up and down. And then, it's crazy to think that people are not making more money now than they had in 1965. You can never, who's not working, who's getting ahead, right? And it's like you have to have outside investments. You have to be able to, to have things that appreciate in value, real estate, gold, crypto, whatever that might be. But in reality, if you look at all of the time from 1965 to now, to understand that you're not actually making any more money than you were. And forget about 1965, even if you want to look at more recent times, there's no increase in the actual net income that you're making in comparison to what's happening with the cost of goods and inflation. So it's just it's unbelievable to see that. And so I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that.
No, it's awful. I mean, and you've got Biden out here spouting Bidenomics and everything else, and I'm like, I just, that anyone believes any of this stuff is just it's amazing to me. Like I've lost money since Biden has taken office. Is that all on Biden? Probably not, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you look at the last few years of Trump, or especially the last year of Trump with COVID and everything. Biden kind of comes in at that point, takes over when the economy was down, but it wasn't any better. I mean, it's not like he's done any better. I've paid more for everything since he's taken over.
That's right.
Again, you can say, well, that's not on him. Okay, fine. But he can't be spouting off also like, hey, look at my Bidenomics.
Right.
Well, if your Bidenomics is me spending 30% more on groceries, spending 40% more on gas, then yeah, you're doing an awesome job, I guess. Mission accomplished.
Yeah.
You can't spout it and then be like, well, it's not my fault. Well, if you're taking credit for something,
That's
then you
right.
got to then take the fault for it as well.
That's right.
Yeah, no, I've lost money. I looked at every single thing that there is right now is more expensive than
Yes.
what it was even just 3 years ago. Everything. My grocery bill has probably gone up. I mean, honestly, it's probably gone from about 140 to $50 a week to now, we're pushing 200. And it's not like we're doing anything more. In fact, we're
Yeah.
probably getting less.
Right.
We're
Because you're
probably
conscious
getting,
of the money.
yeah, we're more conscious. I'm not getting steak as much. I'm not, unless it's on sale. Like, I'm looking at these things, and so I'm actually getting less and paying more.
Right.
Gas to fill up my car. It's way higher than it was. My car insurance is way higher than it was.
Yep.
Every single thing, man. So, and I haven't seen a great increase in my wages, my wife's wages. I haven't seen a massive increase in any of that
No.
stuff. So it's like, yeah, I don't know how you rectify this. I don't. I was just thinking about this today, and I knew this was a topic, but I was just thinking about this today of like what we pay in America. So you tax my income, you tax the goods that I buy, you tax the property that I own. Not only in my state, not only my house, but my car.
Yep.
You tax the gas that I put in my car. You tax every single thing. When does it end? When do we say it's enough? I mean, we've seen this, and we may get into it. I'm not sure how far we're going to get into this, but we're talking about like, the people are hearkening back to like, hey, we're heading for a Great Depression or minimally a silent depression, and it's kind of like, yeah, I can see that. Like, does there not just need to be a great reset in this country, where it, when enough is enough of like, hey, haven't you taken enough of my money? Clearly you can't control it. Clearly things have gotten out of control.
Yeah.
Does there not need to be just a great reset on all this? And I don't know what that looks like, right? So you can't take Social Security away from people. I kind of understand that. I kind of get that. As I get closer to that age, I'm like, well, dang, it better be there if I've been paying
Right.
in for the past 40 years or whatever it
Yep.
will be by the time I retire. I need it to be there. But I mean, there has to be something that we have to push reset on, and maybe we can't do it. And it seems like it's just gonna further and further decline. I mean, you see like in New York where we're housing, these illegal immigrants in this building, and it's costing,
I've got that. Yes.
6,000. You
Yeah.
got
We'll
that. Okay.
talk about
So
that.
we'll
Yeah.
talk about it.
Absolutely.
But
But no,
like,
it's very relevant. Yeah.
yeah, just all the stuff that we are paying for, it's not coming out of the government's pocket. Like, people are like, it's the government, someone's paying for this. It's
Right.
us. It's everyone in this country that's paying for it. Maybe you're fine with that, but I guarantee there's a lot of people that aren't happy of everything that's taxed. Like, we're taxed on tax. I mean, it's insane. It's just absolutely incredible. And it doesn't seem to want to end at any point in time. It's not getting better. Like, we talked about this, like, we're now stuck with these grocery bills. Do you really think the grocery stores are going to be like, after, let's just say, Biden's out and someone else comes in? Do you think the grocery stores are going to be like, well, all right, let's lower our prices now?
Right.
No, they're not. Like, we're
Yeah.
just going to get used to paying, 20% more for meats,
Yep.
10% more for milk, whatever it is. We're now just going to be used to paying that, because it's not like they're going to go back now and be like, oh, 99 cents a pound,
Right. Yeah.
ground
They're not
beef,
giving you a
right?
break.
Right.
Yeah.
So now we're stuck with this stuff. So I don't know what the answer is. As always, we bring up all these points. We never really have an answer. It's just
Yeah.
a frustration thing. That's like, there has to be a better way. There has to be a better
Well,
way.
I'll tell you, you mentioned like the Great Depression. So I pulled some stats. And again, we're not trying to compare the Great Depression specifically to today. Obviously, things are dramatically different and, all of those types of things, right? However, during the Great Depression in 1930, the average home in the United States cost $3,900. Today, the average cost of a house in America is $436,000. The average car in the Great Depression or during the Great Depression, 1930, the average car cost $600. Today, the average car in America costs about $48,000. During the Great Depression in 1930, the average rent was about $216 a year. Now in America, the average rent is about $24,000 a year. Now, all of that, you say, okay, yeah, but people are making more money today. That's absolutely true. The average salary in 1930 in America was $1,300. Today, the average salary or income is $56,000. So here's the issue. If the average home went from $3,900 to $436,000, but the salary only went from $1,300 to $56,000, then they're nowhere near growing in tandem. They're not going together. They're not moving in parallel. You have a home cost that is 100 plus times higher, 110 times higher than it was in 1930. But a salary cost that's only gone up, or a salary growth that's only gone up 50 times.
So tell me again, what was the home price in 1930?
$3,900.
Okay. So adjusted for inflation, because this is what everyone's going to do.
Yep.
Adjusted for inflation, that would be $68,343. And what was the salary back then?
$1,300 a year.
That puts you on par with around $23,000 adjusted for inflation.
There you go.
So
instead, it's 56,000. So you can adjust for the inflation and double it on the salary side, right?
Sure.
Except you said that the house was how much again?
Like 68,000.
68,000. Double that, you're only at 130,000.
Right.
But the house is 436,000, right?
Yeah.
So it's quadruple that amount. So you can double it over here, but you're quadruple plussing it over here as one expense, because then you have cars, you have all of your other bills, again, groceries, utilities, all of these other things, right? And
because you say an average car was $600. That's like $10,500.
Yeah. And instead, it's $48,000 is the average cost of a car.
It's insane.
So there's absolutely no way that you could claim that like our income has moved with inflation. Has income gone up? Of course it has. But it has been so far outpaced by inflation and cost of goods that it is absurd. It's quadruple. It is quadruple the cost of inflation to the average American in relation to their income is more than quadruple how much their salary has actually gone up.
Yeah.
And it's just impossible. So how can you sustain that? Well, you can't. So what do you have? You have this ever increasing gap between the wealthy and the poor. And you do, of course, you lose the middle class, right? You hear that all the time. And people don't even, I don't think, understand what that means, right? You just think of it as, well, you're either rich or you're not or whatever. But what does it really mean? And how would you lose a middle class? Well, you'd lose a middle class because you don't pay them any more than you were in 1965. But you've doubled or tripled or quadrupled all of their expenses. How could you manage to accomplish anything? How could you live? Debt is skyrocketing. Debt is going crazy. And the reason is because that's the only way that people can stay ahead. They have to go into debt, right? And so I have one more little thing for you here. For the first time in U.S. history, U.S. Treasury returns are on track to fall for 3 consecutive years. In 2022, U.S. Treasury returns were nearly double the 2008 losses at minus 17%. To put this in perspective, it's the second worst annual return for U.S. Treasuries ever. The worst year was 1788.
Oh my gosh.
The only time that Treasury yields have been worse than they are this year was 1788. We are looking at 200-year scopes, and we're breaking all-time records. We're seeing economic drop-off that's the worst that it's been in 200 plus years. It's unprecedented. And the idea that we have people, whether they're in the media or anywhere else, that continue to try to either put their head in the sand or keep our head in the sand to make sure that we don't see or understand or talk about this is absurd, because it is not sustainable. And so the unfortunate fact of the matter is no nation, it doesn't matter who or where, can manage to continue on a path like this and think that it's going to last. And when you look at then these things that have happened, again, we can get into COVID and all these other things, but then you print trillions and trillions of dollars. Now you've only further flooded the market than what it already was. You further devalued the dollar than what it already was. And it only exacerbates and just multiplies the problems around the situation. And it's just getting incredibly scary because, again, we talked about this the other week, that the U.S. has already sent Ukraine over $120 billion. $120 billion, and they're not done sending money.
No.
And so when you look into how much money that truly is, if you spent $10 million a day, it would take you over 32 years to spend it all. Can you imagine such a thing?
Yeah.
If a person could count to 120 billion, it would take you 11,400 years to count that high. If you stacked the bills, it would be over 7,500 miles high. So the reality is, and it's all taxpayer money. You were just talking about this, about how we're paying for it, right? The government says they're sending money to Ukraine. Yeah. They're not doing anything.
No.
They're giving our money to Ukraine. And they're giving an amount of money to Ukraine that is impossible to imagine, because I'm not familiar with all of the intricacies of the Ukrainian economy, but I'm guessing that $10 million goes a long way in Ukraine. But that's one day's worth of spending. And if you spent that every day for 32 years, you could only get to the 120 billion that we've given them already, not including what we're going to give them in the future and what we're trying to get more bills passed to give them more money. How is that sustainable? But we have people in this country that are starving. We have people in Maui suffering from these wildfires that can't get any assistance. We have no ability to keep kids safe in schools. We have, all of these crazy problems, drugs running rampant, people coming across the border, cities falling into complete chaos. But we're not paying people any more money, and we're giving all the money we have to other countries. For the record, I'm not saying that we shouldn't help Ukraine. Like, personally, I'm not saying that that's necessarily the case. But to give away $120 billion, when is there the off switch, right? When does that stop? And particularly, again, how do you do it when the value of that money to the average person hasn't seen their actual net income increase since 1965? It doesn't make sense, man. Doesn't make sense.
Not at all. It is such a travesty. And this is where, you stop playing politics and you start looking at each individual American and say, this isn't a Republican or a Democrat situation. This is a both situation. Yeah. This affects everybody. So we have these old heads that have been in here, and I don't really know what the end game is with this, because it's always about control. But who wants to control a country that is just desolate and poor and broke? Like, who wants to rule a country like that? Like, what is the point of that? What does this do for you? I don't.
I guess because we're not there yet.
Feet?
We're not there yet, right? So it's kind of like,
but of course, it's pushing to that limit. Like when you have hundreds, and thousands of people every day coming into this country, and we're somehow taking care of them. It like, what common sense is this? Like,
Yeah.
we can't do this. We can't support everybody. Sure, would we love to? Well, I guess, like, yeah, maybe if we're, Saudi Arabia, or we're
Right.
Dubai or something like that, right? Where
Yeah.
we literally have apparently endless money, but of course, it's not that. We don't have that. We're never going to have that, and you're just breaking the backs of your own citizens to do this, to give money to everyone else but your own citizens. I don't understand how there is nobody, like how you could be a Democrat or a Republican and see this and not say, this is a problem. We don't want these people in charge anymore, and just completely overhaul the whole entire thing.
Yeah.
Now, I guess you could go into like, well, because it's rigged and this is rigged and that is rigged. I was thinking about this today as well. Did a lot of thinking today, apparently. But, we talked about term limits for, for senators, and I'm thinking of, two people just off the top of my head. I feel like Dwight, from The Office. Top of my head, Stanley Phyllis. To get the weight loss surgery,
Yeah.
Kevin, and I'm thinking off the top of my head of like two people, right? Dianne Feinstein and Mitch McConnell,
Yep.
who have no business at all being in there. In fact, it's criminal at this point, what we're doing. But then I'm like, okay, but there are term limits, because Mitch McConnell has to run every, whatever it is, 4 years. I don't know what it is. But people still keep voting him in. So there are term limits, because I remember the whole thing when people were running against McConnell. But the problem is it's only, I guess, the other party that can run against him. So if you're in a Republican stronghold, you're just going to continue to vote for that guy. Well, maybe, you need to change your thought process on that. And you need to then vote for Democrat to get him out of there. If the Democrat you don't like and he's not doing a good job, let's rotate it. Let's get him out. Let's find people that are going to do, like, we're so divided. Like, it has to be vote on along the party line regardless. And that's just, and of course, that's really what apparently they want, whoever they are. That's what they want. They want that division. They don't want you to think outside the box and say, well, I normally vote Republican, but this guy has been in the office, for since George Washington was a senator. Maybe it's time for me to look elsewhere. What's this guy have to say? What can this guy do? I don't know. Maybe I made my own case for term limits there, just because I don't know that people are willing to vote outside of party lines. I just, there's not enough of us in this country, I guess, that says, I'm not voting because you're a Republican. I'm voting or because you're a Democrat. I'm voting because this is what I actually believe in. This is what you're claiming to believe in. But there's just not enough of that. We want to vote along these party lines, and now the whole thing is just, obviously it's not working. We are in an awful place. I still think we're the greatest country in the world, but we're getting closer and closer to not being that.
Yeah.
And we need to do something before it gets to that point.
Yeah, and I think that the issue is, or at least part of it, as you're referencing term limits, is that it's not a term limit when you just have to get reelected. A term limit is you cannot run again.
Yeah.
Now, whether that's 4 years, 8 years, 10 years, whatever it is,
Shoot,
maybe it's just a maximum age. Yeah, maybe it's just a maximum age, like however we need to look at it. There has to be a time that you can no longer run. And that needs to be the focus. And instead, we're in this situation. And here's the other thing that happens, right? So let's really get down to brass tacks. When it comes time for re-election, what are the things that you're going to do? Well, you're going to try to demonize the other side, and you're going to try to give money away to the people that you want to have vote for you, right? In a lot of cases, those are lesser fortunate, lesser educated folks who you can then tell them, hey, I'm going to put X number of dollars in your pocket. I'm going to increase this type of aid. I'm going to do these types of things. It's short lived, but it's enough to just keep you in there for another X number of years. And the reality is, it just shouldn't even be an option. The country was not founded with the idea that politicians would be using politics as a full-time job and a career for life. You would do it for a period of time, and then you were done because you were doing it while you had a regular job, while you did real things. And it's turned into these career politicians and these people that have been in the Senate and in the Congress for years and years and years and years and years and years. And because they're so known and they're so entrenched that their name actually becomes a brand, right?
Yep.
And just like no different than a lot of times people will say like, oh, you want some Coke? It's just soda, right? It's not necessarily actually Coke. And so, it's Q-tips. It's any of these types of things that become the kind of the name, the go-to, kind of name for the product, even if it's not the actual brand. And when you're a voter and you're only voting every so often, every however many years, and you walk in there, it's, there's Mitch McConnell. I remember him. I know that name, right? I'm not necessarily keeping track of every Senate race, every congressional hearing, every little thing that's going on to know what I need to know about every individual that's running for office. And unfortunately, you have an uneducated voting population to a large degree. And part of that reason is because they tune out, because it all sounds like static, because nobody's trustworthy. Nobody tells you the truth. They demonize the other side. They try to, they essentially turn the legal system into a political machine, which is why they time out all of the indictments and all of the different things to just, come on, man. Whether someone believes that Trump should be indicted or not, why? Why exactly? What is the argument that out of 365 days in a year that it had to be the day before the Iowa caucuses or something like that? Like what? Like you pick these things very strategically, but why would that be the case? The legal system should not be affected by politics,
right?
Except these judges and these states' attorneys and everyone else. Well, they get appointed by the government leadership. And so needless to say, then that becomes kind of a puppet. And then you're able to manipulate the legal system and politicize the legal system in those ways. It's insane, man. It's just, and we're not getting better. We're getting worse because as we've talked about on the show many times, they're not hiding it anymore. They don't feel like they need to hide it because nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to happen. So they don't hide anything anymore. It's right in our face and they're daring us to do anything about it. And there's nothing we can do or will do at least.
Yeah. No, you're putting people that walked into the Capitol building on January 6th in jail for 17 years. And you're letting someone who, raped and murdered someone, they're getting, 10 years, 5 years. So, whatever you think of the whole January 6th thing, I don't know. I don't care. To me, it was idiotic. But there was nothing there that I was like, I thought that anyone was going to, truly overthrow the government. Like I didn't feel like any of that. One lady did lose her life. Was pretty tragic. Again, she was an idiot. I don't know what she was trying to do. But you have them opening the gates up and letting people in. And then you've got certain people who are, caught on camera, removing pieces of glass, but they're nowhere to be seen, nowhere to be found. There's no warrants out for their arrests. It all kind of is like, what is happening? What are we doing? Everything though now has become, this kind of, this just kind of dog and pony show. And it's just, let's show how bad this side is. And then this side is, let's show how bad this side is. And
I'll tell you something else that ties in with everything that we're talking about. Savings rates in the U.S. are on the decline. Savings rates. So this is the average homeowner, the amount of their savings, personal savings. They fell to 3.5% in July. So to give you an idea of how things have changed, in mid 2022, the savings rate was at its worst. It's about 2.5%. To give you an idea of how much that has changed, in 2020, savings rates hit an all-time record of approximately 35%. From 2020, savings rates were at 35% to mid 22, year and a half, 2 years later, 2.5%. Savings rates are dropping sharply again and are on track to hit their lowest level since 2008. Excess savings in the U.S. are about to mark their 24th consecutive monthly decline.
Jeez.
Now, if you believe that that money was being saved because of stimulus money being given to people, so people have more money in their pocket and they were saving some of it, if you believe that that's the case, then you also then, in theory, would have to agree with the possibility then that the government would print more money to re-stimulate that the same way and do this again, but it only exacerbates the problems within the economy. You're devaluing our dollar. And we're actually seeing lots and lots of countries now that are moving away from using the dollar as the backing for their own currency. People never thought that would ever happen.
No.
Now you're seeing it all over the country. All over the world. And so, the dollar does not have the value that it used to have. Everyone knows that. But you have to understand why. And then you have to look at it and go, well, are we about to make the exact same mistake all over again? Well, I got news for you. There's an election coming up. So it wouldn't surprise me, because guess what else you've been hearing about in the news an awful lot lately? COVID.
Yeah.
And mask mandates and all of these things coming back. And so what happens? You have a bad economy. COVID comes back in as the boogeyman. And then magically there's the excuse to put some stimulus money into the economy. For what reason? You know what the stimulus money is stimulating? Votes.
Mm-hmm.
Votes. That's what it's there to stimulate.
There you go. Yeah. Last year, you hardly heard of anyone getting COVID. Now, all of a sudden, you got Whoopi Goldberg off The View because she has it. Joe Biden has it. It's just it's just popping back up. Like, what happened last year? Because it pretty much seemed like it disappeared.
Yeah.
As quickly as it came in, it seemed like it just disappeared. And I'm sure there were still cases out there, but yeah, flu was on the rise again, miraculously, and now COVID's back on the rise. And we're going into, in the next few months, we're going to be gearing up for, another election. It's just, come on, again, it's not even being hidden. It's just, and everyone's telling you this is what's going to happen. Like, everyone's telling you they're going to go back in. And now, you've got people stop talking about wearing masks, like, weirdly, like, just completely oblivious to the fact that it's already come out and said pretty much how useless masks were.
Yes, that's right.
Like, we just all of a sudden forgot that. Yeah. And then, people saying like, oh, well, it was the Democrat, like, it was, such a myth that there was a lockdown. Like, and it was like one person, like how short our memory is, that like we now say that like the Democrats locked us down. And I'm like, dude, like, I'm living a 1984 novel, right? I talk about this way too much, but it really is. It's like, what happened didn't really happen. And I'm like, well, yes, of course it is. Like, the whole teachers union didn't want to go back to school unless they had like things met that had nothing at all to do with COVID. It was like, curriculums and this and that and everything else. They were gonna, like, no, we're not gonna go back to school. And then you hear this Randy Weingartner come out and be like, yeah, none of this essentially none of this happened.
Yeah,
like, we were trying to get everything back. Like, we have tweets, we have it on record. Like, whether you deleted them or not, there's screenshots of this. What do you mean? How do you look someone square in the face and say, yeah, we were trying and we were pushing to get people back at school and they wouldn't let us?
No, it's preposterous, man. It's absolutely insane. And that's the whole thing is, you look at this and you are seeing it, man. I was just watching something the other day where, they were talking about how it used to be you were ridiculed and or just like kicked off of TV interviews or things like that if you tried to claim that masks didn't work, if you tried to question anything about vaccines or different things. Like, it was just like, oh man, you were a crackpot, and then now they would silently walk it back and it's like, oh yeah, well, okay, yeah, I guess that is true. But it's true when it's too late and it doesn't matter. And then now it's kind of like, well, now it'll be, Well, we learned the lessons from last time. Now we fixed it. Those vaccines, we have better vaccines now because they're already saying that. They have new vaccines. They're better vaccines. We figured it out now. So everything's good. Oh, well, now we have a better understanding of all of this stuff. Now you have housing at an all-time insane high, right? Mortgage payments to income ratios are now pushing as high as 40%. To give you an idea, the standard kind of rule of thumb is that if you're buying a house, you don't want your mortgage payment to be more than 25% of your gross income because you need enough to be able to pay all your other bills and do all your other stuff.
Sure.
Now, because rates are increasing, of course, and have been incredibly high, now it's about 40%. So think about that, 40%. And keep in mind that what I'm saying is that your 40% of your, in many cases, your gross income, not your net. So that's pre-tax. So now you're in that situation where you start having a very hard time being able to pay for your other bills. In 2008, that was the peak of that ratio was 2008, and that was about 34%. And that was by far the highest level in history.
Jeez.
And now it's as high as 40%. And so what do you look at? Well, you look at, are the feds going to keep rates up? 90% of all mortgages currently have a rate below 5%. And so what that means is all of these higher rates that the government has put out because they're, the Fed's raising all the rates, who's really been affected by them yet? People aren't buying and selling their houses, so they haven't really been impacted by this yet. So how is it going to impact inflation all that much if it's not actually doing anything to get money out of the economy? It's not doing anything to help.
No, that's it. Yeah,
it's keeping money on the sideline.
Exactly what it's doing.
Yeah.
And it's on purpose. Clearly, it's on purpose.
Yes. Yeah, because otherwise you would look at this and go, oh, well, we can remedy this situation. Hey, we're all, by the way, throughout this entire process, we've also given away $120 billion. But we have people in our own country that don't have enough money to save, that have 40% of their income going to housing just to be able to pay their bills. But it makes more sense to send $120 billion to a company or a country that we support because they're fighting a war against a country that we don't like and that doesn't like us.
Yeah.
And so everyone else has to suffer, in the meantime
right.
for it.
Yeah.
It seems very strange.
It can't be, hey, let's lower the tax rate, 5%, 10%, and, put more money in the pockets of people, or, let's cut out some sales tax here, or, something, right? I mean, when you sent those stimulus checks, they did help stimulate the economy because people were able to go out and spend a little bit more. Yes, I'm sure they saved a good bit of it, but they were able to go out. So it's like, why is that not a country that we want? Why is that not a country that we want people buying goods, selling goods, and keeping the economy just churning? You put an extra 20% in my pocket, I'm going to go out and I'm going to invest that. You're investing that in businesses, small businesses, whatever. They're collecting taxes. They're paying that in. The government makes more money. It's insanity to me. It's like, I'm Will Ferrell, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Like, can I be that dumb? Am I that far off that you should be doing everything you possibly can? But instead we're touting like, our jobs increase. Well, yeah, of course your jobs increase because everybody lost their jobs when COVID hit. So it doesn't take that much. But how many people are working a second job, even third job to try and make ends meet? And you're counting that now as like, well, there's another job I've made. No, you've just now made someone else have to work 2 jobs or 3 jobs. I'm so confused as to the whole touting of these Bidenomics and people like the people that just defend this and say, no, we're in a better place. Tell me what you're doing because you
can't believe it. You can't believe it. You can say it, but you can't believe it.
Yeah. So show me what you're doing that I'm doing wrong because I'm doing the same thing and I'm in a worse position. So you tell me what you're doing better or what the government gave you that they didn't give me, whatever it is, show me that because clearly I can't be the only one that has seen everything increase. I like, I don't know how you wrap your mind around this stuff. I really don't. I don't know how you defend it.
Well, no, and I'll tell you, you touched on this earlier, so I want to make sure we hit on it before we wrap that part up. We're talking about all of the money being spent overseas, all the money being spent on immigration and all of these things. The Roosevelt Hotel in New York City has 1,025 rooms, and American taxpayers are currently paying for every single one of those rooms to be filled by illegal immigrants at a cost of $6,000 per family per month. To add insult to injury, the hotel is actually owned by the Pakistani government. So what's happening is American citizens are paying for the housing of illegal immigrants and then also subsidizing the government of Pakistan. And so when you look at 1,025 rooms in the hotel and $6,000 a month, and that is $6.15 million per month. And needless to say, there are 12 months in a year. That is $73,800,000 per year that we are spending to house 1,025 families of illegal immigrants. $74 million. Yeah, that's just one hotel. That's just one. We know there's a lot more than one. What could $74 million do to help people in Maui right now? Right?
Yeah.
Just that alone. Like that alone. What could it do? And one hotel, we're spending $74 million a year. And putting people up in a beautiful, incredibly nice Roosevelt Hotel in downtown New York City. Why? In the most expensive place in the country. Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you send them to Tulsa, Oklahoma, put them up in a Motel 6? You're putting them up in the Roosevelt Hotel in the middle of downtown Manhattan.
Because this is what they're going to be saying is that, you've got the Governor Abbott shipping them up there. So people are going to say, well, look, had you not shipped them up there, well, somebody still has to pay for it.
That's right.
That's not it's really a moot point. He ships them up there because it's like, well, we can't handle them anymore. You're still letting people in. You're selling the pieces that would have put the border up, put a border up between us. You're selling those for mere cents on the dollar. And, it's more of a statement of like, here, you figure it out. But instead, it's not, they're just, okay, we'll put them up in this hotel. Like the hotel doesn't have a discounted rate for, multiple bookings,
Right. Well, and I got something better for you here. So all of these illegal immigrants are being housed at the Roosevelt Hotel in New York. If you go to the Roosevelt Hotel website, it says, "We thank you all for letting us be part of the very best of New York for the last 100 years. We leave you with this thought from the man who inspired our existence. Far better it is to dare mighty things, to win glorious triumphs, even though checkered by failure, than to take rank with those poor spirits who neither enjoy much nor suffer much." That's a quote from Theodore Roosevelt. That's what they put on the website, and there are no other tabs. You go to reserve, it just goes you right back to this. You can't make reservations. You can't book hotel rooms. It is literally owned by the Pakistani government, being funded by the United States taxpayer, and filled with nothing but illegal immigrants. And you can't do anything. It's not even a functioning website anymore, other than just having a quote from Teddy Roosevelt and saying, "Thanks for letting us be a part of New York for 100 years. And now this is what it's being used for."
Yeah, do we even get into? I don't even want to get into it. But why is a government in another country owning any property in the United States?
And we're gonna have that conversation at some point. It won't be tonight because they own a whole lot. China, Pakistan, India, even Russia. There's a lot. There's a lot of stuff, and a lot of major hotels and major hotel brands that are owned by overseas entities. Yeah. So anyway, we're gonna get ready to wrap this episode up here in a second because we're endeavoring to be able to shorten it tonight, and by God, we're gonna try to accomplish it at least for the first episode. But I do have this one thing. It's totally unrelated to this, but I thought it'd be something to close on. Did you have anything else you wanted to throw out there though before we move into closing?
No, I'm good. Oh, well, actually, you know what? R.I.P. to one Mr. Jimmy Buffett and one Mr. Steve Harwell. We lost two good ones, this past weekend. So, yeah, R.I.P. to them.
Good call. I actually had meant to put that in my notes and totally blanked on it. So yes, I meant to talk about that.
I heard a thing on Buffett that he had put out, and it's going to be somewhere in here, and I can't quote me exactly, but I want to say that he has put out 52 albums in his career. I'm like, is that like two a year? Like, how many is that?
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, he was very prolific. That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, that's a huge amount of music too. I mean, it really is just an incredible. It was as of 2023, the late Jimmy Buffett released a staggering total of 36 albums in his lifetime. 29 studio albums, 9 compilation albums, 14 live albums, and 4 specialty albums. So yeah, 36 albums.
Well, wait,
and that is
read those off, because I mean, it was on. I don't know. I was listening to the to Sirius XM, and they kept bringing up that stat. So what was it again?
It says the late Jimmy Buffett released a staggering total of 36 albums in his lifetime. This includes 29 studio albums, 9 compilation albums, 14 live albums, and 4 specialty albums.
Okay, 56. That was the number they hit. 56 albums. So you add all that up. So I don't know, maybe
very weirdly worded that they
it was 56 albums. I knew it was in the 50s that they had said, but yeah. Wow. 56 albums.
56 albums. Dude had a net worth of $550 million.
Jeez.
Good for you, Jimmy Buffett.
Yeah.
That's impressive. Yeah, Steve Harwell too, Smash Mouth lead singer there, had a lot of success for a while, and 56 years old, man. I mean, just crazy.
Yeah. It's awful.
Gotta be grateful for your health.
Yeah.
All right. So last thing I have, I thought this was a pretty crazy story here, so I'm just gonna bring up something so you can see the picture. Again, if you're listening to the podcast, you won't need to be able to see this, but I just thought it was pretty neat to see. The picture that you're seeing here, they look identical. They're actually 2 different people. It's the mugshots of 2 different men. One of them is named Will West, and the other one, William West. They were not related.
I don't believe it. They just didn't have. They did not have 23andMe back in the day. I can promise you, those 2 are related somehow, some way. I don't care.
It says they were both sent to Leavenworth Prison at the same time in 1903. And there was confusion at first, but the staff eventually figured out that they had 2 different prisoners with the exact same name who looked exactly alike. So they couldn't figure out how to be able to tell them apart. And it turns out the warden at the prison had like read up and studied fingerprints. And he decided to try to use these guys for their fingerprints to be able to tell them apart. And those 2 guys, Will West and William West, who were in Leavenworth at the same time, were the same age and looked pretty much identical, ended up being one of the big reasons that we started using fingerprints to ID inmates, because there was no other way to tell those guys apart. They looked the same. And so that was one of the very first cases of using fingerprints in the legal system.
Everything has an origin story. That is insane. It really is. I would love to have someone exhume those 2 bodies and test the DNA on that. They had to have been related. I mean, and then just the odds, the names being exactly the same, looking exactly the same. I mean, I could see
same age, same part of the country, going to the same prison, everything.
I mean, there's always talk about doppelgangers, but they usually don't have the same name. They don't look exactly the same. I mean, same area, same prison. That is crazy. I mean, that's fascinating.
Yeah. Just thought that was a really cool thing to think okay, yeah, like, wow, what do you like back then? What did you do? You know, you had two
Right.
guys look the same name in the same prison. What are you supposed to do with them? Well, the only way you can truly tell them apart is fingerprints. So that's what they did. Cause I mean, they literally didn't realize they had two different people at first. Cause you'd see one guy and then a little bit later you see him again. You're like, wait a minute. It's like the Matrix or something, like a black cat
Wow.
walking across. You're like, whoa, what did I just see? A deja vu.
That is so
yeah.
funny. So I tell the story quickly because you're talking about like walking past. So my wife is a twin, and one of the guys that I used to be in the worship band with at church didn't know that. And so he saw her with me because he was new. He saw her with me one day. We were just there. And then he walks upstairs and there she is with another man.
It's like, am I in a dream right now?
And he had no clue. And he was like,
wow.
Are you telling me she's doing this up in church just like this?
Right behind his back and in front of his face.
I don't think he ended up telling me that story probably 2-3 years after, but he was like,
great friend.
Yes, exactly. Well, I think he ended up figuring it out. You know, I'm not sure exactly when he figured it out that day, but he did. But he was like, you have got to be kidding me. What kind of churches, what kind of people are these?
That's so great.
Oh, so yeah.
That's how it works. Well, you know what? Could have fingerprinted them. Nowadays, they'd just be fingerprinted. You don't have to worry about it.
That's
Even
it.
if they had the same name, wouldn't matter. Oh man. All right. Well, I think that's everything we got tonight. We did our best here. We fit in as much as we could, and we'll wrap it up. Moving forward, I think these episodes we will try to keep them somewhere around this length, a little bit more palatable, a little more something maybe that somebody can listen to the first half on their drive to work and the second half on their drive back home. So we'll work on that. But as always, want to thank our global audience for listening, checking us out, and we'll continue to do our best to keep you entertained. And until next time, everybody, have a good night. We'll talk soon.
Good night.